Peter and Julie, thanks so much for being here to talk about environmental goals and priorities in the state.
Thank you for having us on.
It's great to be here.
So Peter, I want to go to you first because the Senate recently passed a constitutional amendment for the right to clean water in New York. It's coming up in the Assembly and then it would go to voters on the ballot. Tell us about what this would mean for New Yorkers. What would it actually do?
So the question that's going to be before voters on the ballots this November is, should we add into our Bill of Rights a language that basically says that each person shall have a right to clean air and water in a healthful environment? That's essentially the addition to the Bill of Rights that New Yorkers have been asking for. It's on poised to get second passage in the legislature, which is really exciting. It's been around for a number of years. And it's going to be a great ballot question for New Yorkers to be able to go to the polls this fall to say, yes, I want clean water. Yes, I want clean air. This is the value set that I want for myself and my family and our community. And this is a really tremendous opportunity that's going to be before the voters in November.
So that's something we'll be looking out for in the Assembly sometime soon. But I want to talk to you both primarily about the state budget. The governor has unveiled his state budget proposal, his strategy to fill the state's $15 billion budget gap. It includes some environmental projects, quite a bit of them actually. Julie, I want to start with you. Given the state's budget deficit, are we seeing any proposals for cuts to environmental programs and policies from the Cuomo administration this year?
Actually, much like has happened in 2020, Governor Cuomo has maintained commitment to the environment, despite the fact that there is this challenging fiscal environment. We're part of a coalition called New Yorkers for Clean Water and Jobs, and as part of that, we asked for the governor to maintain a $300 million environmental protection fund. His budget does that. We asked him for another down payment on addressing clean water, like Peter was referencing, how we need to do investments in clean water infrastructure. The governor has proposed another $500 million for clean water infrastructure. He has proposed a $440 million four-year program for New York Parks 100 to continue their investment in parks as they're approaching their 100-year anniversary. Those are all great commitments that we're really happy for the governor to see. One of the items that was a priority for both of our organizations, I believe, and many others, is a proposed $3 billion bond act that didn't move forward last year. The governor has not proposed that now, but we did hear from his Director of Division of Budget, Robert Mujica, this week, that the governor is very committed still to the Bond Act. I think they want to wait and see what happens with funding from the federal government before we decide whether or not we can move forward with it this year or if it needs to wait until 2020. Either way, I think when they're ready to advance that, we have a strong coalition of people, not just from the environment, but also from the business community, from labor, who are interested in seeing that advance and supporting protecting our environment here in New York. So that's a tremendous leadership we've seen on that front.
With a Bond Act, just for background, it would have provided billions of dollars in funding for environmental projects across the state. Do you think the legislature should kind of go around the governor and try to pass it on their own? This is obviously such a big priority. It was a huge priority last year. It fell off the wayside because of the state's finances.
So I believe that the legislature and the governor need to work together and be mindful of what the financial situation is as they're deciding whether or not they should proceed with that. So I think that's something we'll be watching for and working with both the legislature and the governor to see the best path.
Peter, speaking of the governor's budget proposal, the state is on track, hopefully, to meet its emissions reduction goals. It has a goal of reducing emissions by 40% by 2030, and then some higher standards in the years after. Based on what we've seen of the governor's budget, I think that people might be worried that because we have this huge budget deficit, that might derail some of the state's goals. Are we seeing any of that in the governor's budget proposal, and where do things stand on that?
Yeah, there's a couple of places in the governor's budget proposal that are concerning of whether or not we're really fully appreciating these emissions goals under our new climate law. We're continuing to see the governor pull money away from clean energy programs to plug budget holes. He's been doing that for a number of years, and this budget continues that. We're going to work with the legislature so that they don't raid those clean energy funds to fit a budget hole, that we actually put those funds to work and put people to work with those funds. So that's a concern of ours. And what we really have not seen so far is that deep level of commitment to reorienting all of state government decisions to actually meet these goals. There's a provision of that climate law that requires it, and we have yet to see that really manifest itself in this budget. So those are things we're going to be asking to do more of. There's another piece of the budget I just wanted to sort of touch on. It's the availability of cash to support these programs. When the legislature and the governor agree to these great programs, a lot of money is sort of appropriated. But what we saw so far with this current budget, and there's still 2 months left, so it could actually happen in those 2 months, but we have not seen the $500 million that was agreed to as an appropriation last spring actually been put out the door for projects to fund clean water infrastructure. It's been a great program. It helps communities fix their pipes, and it's put a lot of people to work. And we're hopeful that we'll see a grant program come out in the next 60 days. But the problem can be is, when the legislature and the governor agreed on big appropriations, cash is short and cash hasn't been backed out into these programs, and that's a problem.
So, Peter, do we know why that funding hasn't been released? Is it one of those withholdings from the State Division of Budget because of the state's budget deficit, or is there another reason?
No, it's simply that. I mean, I think they're looking for cash to put into the COVID crisis, rightly so. But, it's time to sort of start addressing these issues and get back to the matter at hand, which is, we have more than $500 million worth of projects that could be put to work right now if that money was let out. And it's a great opportunity, not only for clean water and the environment, but it's a huge opportunity to put people to work. And jobs is what we need. So it's a great win-win for the environment and the economy.
That makes me think, Julie, about how people often see green energy projects as a good thing, but they don't really understand the tangible cost of them. What are we looking at financially in terms of projects in the state's future? And how can you help people understand that these things cost money and they're for the greater good for the future of the state's environment?
So I think what's really important is actually the governor announced in the State of the State that we are now at 100 renewable energy projects that the state is advancing, and including in that over 4,000 megawatts of offshore wind between projects that have already been approved and projects that they just awarded this week to Equinor for 2 very large projects off of Long Island in Massachusetts. So those are items that we are seeing move forward that will start generating jobs in the very near future. It's taken a long time. Last year, we actually updated the state's renewable energy siting program to make it easier, to make it faster. And I think we're going to start to see the benefits of that very shortly. We are also going to see other emissions reductions and other job opportunities in other sectors. One of the areas we haven't talked about yet is transportation. And, there's a lot of things that we need to do to address transportation emissions, which are actually the #1 source of transportation of greenhouse gas emissions in our state at this point. And there's a number of things that I think will be coming out of the Transportation Advisory Panel's recommendation to the Climate Action Council, which is the process that we're going through to come up with a plan to tackle climate, including, advancing a clean car standard to get to 100% zero emission cars, advancing a clean truck standard to get to zero emission trucks. And we are hopeful for a low carbon fuel standard, which would help to pay for all of those items, including electrification, by making fossil fuel providers pay for credits from clean fuel providers like electricity.
So, Julie, are those ideas that the Department of Environmental Conservation could do administratively, or would the legislature have to give approval? And do we see the legislature moving on any of those items?
So some of the rules, like the clean cars and clean trucks, DEC has a great amount of regulatory authority to take those actions. And in fact, the state of New York is required to either follow what's called the California car standards or to go with EPA standards. And New York is what's known as a California car state. So for that, they can 100% move forward administratively, and they have done so in the past, and I would expect that we will see that in the future here. Some of the other items, it is possible a low carbon fuel standard is more likely to require legislation. It's possible that they have the authority now, but I think that we're seeking legislation on that front.
All right, well, we will keep an eye out. Peter Wanowicz from Environmental Advocates of New York and Julie Tai from the New York League of Conservation Voters. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.